while we wait for the last few seconds to tick by here, can I just ask how many people here are developers? Oh, good. Okay, that's awesome. How many people here have developed for the iPhone or any iOS device? Okay. Oh, this is exactly the audience I was hoping for. Perfect. So I'm going to kind of assume that you're familiar with object-oriented concepts. If you know some C, that'd be great. I'm not going to cover those basics. It's not going to be too technical of a talk, but I am going to spend a lot of time in code. Is that me? Or are we like dismissed for recess? If you're not interested in code, there's probably other great sessions at this exact same time that you might be more interested in. I am going to spend a lot of time talking about code, so I won't be offended if you leave. All right, I think it's about time to go, so I'll just start. Oh, it works. Okay, good. So first I'm just going to talk in general about what you need to do development. Then I'm going to run over ObjectiveC, and it's kind of initially scary syntax. It turns out to be actually pretty simple once you kind of know what's going on. And then I'm actually going to create just a very simple single view iOS iPhone application, just kind of walk you through some of the very high level basics of doing that. So first what you need is a Mac. It doesn't matter which type of Mac as long as it's running an Intel processor. That does include the Mac Mini. So if you're looking for a kind of inexpensive entry into the Mac world, you can write iOS apps on a Mini. You can also buy them used. This is from Craigslist just a couple days ago, under $400. Not too bad, right? If you don't have a Mac already and you don't want to buy a Mac, there are some other options. Mac in a cloud. It's a remote desktop solution where you kind of pay by the hour, or they have some other different payment plans. I think probably long term it's not a very viable solution, but it is an option if you want to just try some things out. If you're hardcore, you can create a Hackintosh, which is where either running on a virtual machine or even on actual raw hardware, getting OS X running on hardware that is not from Apple. I've never tried it. I understand it's difficult, the initial setup and to keep it running. So more power to you if you're interested in that kind of thing. What's that? Not so bad anymore, says Ray. So if you have questions about Hackintosh, Ray right here in the front row. I bought a Mac. Much easier. Yeah, exactly. Time is worth money. There are other non-native approaches too, things like AppCelerator or AppMobi or PhoneGap or any of those sorts of platforms. You write in HTML and JavaScript or some other intermediary language and then compile down to an app that you can deploy. I'm not going to talk about any of those solutions. I'm just going to talk about if you're writing a native app today. There are some other sessions. Brad Marsh had one last section on that exact same thing. So check those out if you're interested. So that's all I'm going to say about hardware. The other things that you need are really Lion. You can use, if you're running Snow Leopard, that's enough. There are some reasons that running Lion just makes it a little bit easier. Primarily that you're going to need XCode. Right now it's at 4.x, whatever the current version is. And the way that you get that right now is through the App Store. And if you're running Snow Leopard, it makes it just a little tricky. Really, Lion is inexpensive. XCode is free. There's not a reason to not do it that way, in my opinion. The other thing that you need is an Apple developer account. Free account is enough. It gives you access to the SDK as well as the documentation. You can develop through there and then test on a simulator. If you actually want to test on a device or distribute your application, you need to pay for a developer account. It's $99 a year. Again, pretty inexpensive. And that's all you need. Man, it is my mic. That's all you need. So let me talk about ObjectiveC. I'm going really fast with this presentation because I've only got 45 minutes and I want to cover a lot of stuff. So if you have questions, just shout. ObjectiveC is a superset of C. This is, by the way, the only bullet point thing I won't subject you to a lot of bullet points, but this is the only slide. So it's a superset of C. Really, it's at its core, it's C. So if you're familiar with the basic syntax of C, you're halfway, or probably more than halfway actually, to using ObjectiveC. But what it provides you is a fully OO set of functionality for C. It also supports dynamic and static typing. Most of the time you're going to see static typing, but it does support for objects dynamic typing and dynamic binding as well. So at its core, it's actually pretty simple. I'm not going to review C syntax, but I am going to talk about what about Objective-C looks initially kind of weird. As you'd expect in an OO language, it supports message expressions. So if you want to call a method on an object, it looks like this. The method expression is contained in square brackets and followed by a semicolon. The object comes first, the method name comes second. If the method takes an input parameter, it's separated from the signature keyword by a colon. So in that second example there, you can see that we're calling method with input on object, and we're passing it parameter value input. As you'd expect from a message expression, it can have a return value, and it looks like you would expect it to. You can nest those messages. So in this particular example, the format method on the prefs object, the return value of that is passed as input to the string with format method on the NSString object. It's pretty straightforward. Questions about that? All right. This is what kind of threw me. So methods that have multiple input parameters. This is the declaration for a method that has multiple input parameters. And let's just break it down. There's two input parameters here. One is called index, and one is called an object. Before the input parameters, you specify the type. So index is an unsigned integer, and an object is going to be dynamically typed at runtime. ID is the keyword for that. Here's what kind of threw me at first. This is the method signature, insert object at index. At index is not the parameter name. Index is the parameter name. At index is the second half of the method name. So if you're coming from a Java background or a C# background or whatever, it would be insert object at index, and then parentheses and a delimited list of your input parameters. Here, the method signature is split into keywords, and each keyword precedes the input parameter and is separated by a colon. So insert object is taking an object. You see the colon between them. And then the second half of that of that method at index is taking index. And when you refer to this method, you call it insert object at index. Questions about that? Hey, guys. Joel taught me most of what I know about Objective-C. It's kind of funny that you're here. Okay. Yes, please. Yeah. It's the name of your method. You can call it whatever you want. Yep. Okay, that's an excellent point. If it was your method, right, your signature keywords can be whatever you want. This is actually a defined method on an array. So thank you for that clarification. Actually, that's an excellent point. Other questions with that? Okay. So here's how you would call it. Here you've got an array called myArray. Insert object. Here's the object we're passing it. At index, here's the index of the array that we want to insert it into. If you have a method with a lot of input parameters, a convention that you'll often see is that they'll align the semicolons. Like say your method signature has to wrap over a single line. You'll often see this convention where the colons are aligned. I'm going to talk just quickly about accessors. So a getter and a setter for an object. Normally an object has an instance variable, and you use a getter or a setter to get or set that value. This is kind of the traditional way, in square brackets, and then set name for the setter, and then the name of the variable for the getter. Later on, they introduced dot syntax, so you can do object dot and, for the getter and the setter. Either of these ways works. You don't usually mix them within a single project. It's kind of a personal preference thing. I'm going to talk a little bit more later about a way, kind of a shortcut way to deal with these. That's all I'm going to say about it for now. And so let's actually open up XCode. All right, so just take a quick. I'm going to mirror the displays here so I can actually see what's happening. While that's happening, I'll just show. So if you've worked on previous projects, it's going to be right here. We're just going to create a new one. Oh, Lord. It's going to be a tiny workspace. Okay, so we've got some templates that we can, some predefined templates here that we can choose from. You can see that Objective-C is used, and XCode is used for both OS 10 and iOS applications. We have some different options here, a master detail app or a tabbed app. Just for today's demonstration, I'm going to do a single viewed application. And let's just call it MinneBar demo. This company identifier is used for a number of different things, but it'll create our bundle identifier for us here. And we're going to use a class prefix of MBD, and this is a custom prefix that you come up with yourself, a 2 or 3 letter prefix. The reason this is here is that there are no namespaces in Objective-C, and so to avoid class collisions, you're supposed to prefix your class names with an identifier that will hopefully keep it unique to you. We're going to target the iPhone, but you could target the iPad or make it a universal app if you want from here. And I'm not going to talk about storyboards and only reference counting at the very highest level later on. We're not going to set up unit codes either. Let's jump in here. I wonder if that's the highest resolution I can get on the projector. All right. No, that's baked in. Better. No! Okay, good. We're still good. It's asking us where we want to put the solution. I'm going to put it just here in this folder. And XCode's going to open up. All right. I guess that's what we're going to have. All right, we've got a bit of, in the center window here, in the editor window, we've got a bit of information about the project. I'm not going to talk about that. If you look over here on the left-hand side, we've got kind of the solution browser here. You can see that some files have been created for us already. We've got a view controller, a header and an implementation file, and an app delegate. And I'm not going to talk to you about the app delegate either. It's something that's created by your main, just like you would expect to see in a C program. But let's dive right into talking about the view controller. So this XIB file is pronounced a nib. That's a That's a holdover from when the extension actually was .nib. And it's an XML file that handles how the interface builder will display this view, as well as how it will be displayed when the app is actually built. And you can see by selecting it, the interface builder here, which used to be a separate part, but is now fully integrated with Xcode, pops up, and we get a view of our view. And then down here on the bottom of the utility pane on the right, we have a list of UIKit objects that we can just drag and drop into this kind of WYSIWYG view. All of this stuff can be done in code, and for more complicated things, a lot of times you'll want to do it in code. But for the purposes of this demo, we're just going to use drag and drop. So let's put an image view in here. And you can see that there are grid lines that snap into place, letting you know when things are centered. It also gives you a lot of information based on guidelines in the human interface guidelines, which is really fantastic. Things about edges and separation and spacing, and there's some really interesting things there. So Interface Builder is actually pretty nice. So now that I'm going to open just so you can see what it looks like. We've got a view. This is kind of our parent view, and within there we've got an image view. With the image view selected, I can go over here and in the utilities pane, I have an attributes inspector, and I can through this attributes inspector actually make quite a few customizations to how that image view is behaving and what its properties are. I want to create an image here for this background view. So what I'm going to do is add some files to the project. So I had a whole thing about how to structure the solution. I'm going to drop it in the interest of time. And I'm just going to create an images right here. I'm going to add some files. And one thing I do want to make sure to note is the naming convention here. You can see that I've got two versions of the same image. One is called background.png and one is called background@2x.png. This is a naming convention that will automatically handle choosing the correct image for Retina displays. So background.png is the full size of the screen, 320 by 480 for the non-Retina displays. The @2x image is twice that, so it's 640 by 960. And the substitution for the right image will be made by the app after it detects which sort of display that it needs to be showing. It's very handy. So with the image view selected, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say that I want the image to be background. You specify the non-@2x version of the image, and then the @2x will be substituted later if it's on a Retina display. Is Ben in here? So what this app is going to do is we're going to be able to create a thought bubble for Ben. So I'm going to have a text box at the top and a button. You can type something in the text box and hit the button, and it'll show up in the word balloon for Ben. So we need to add a few more things to this view. We're going to need a label inside the word balloon, a text box here at the top, and a button. 3 simple objects. All of those are UIKit objects, and we can pull them, just drag and drop out of the selector down here. Let's put text view up there, and you can see again the guidelines suggesting like this is the proper amount of spacing that you should have between the edge of the screen. And you can resize it here. There's also a size. Oops, that's probably. There's also a size inspector if I want to set that width manually or the X or Y offset. That can all be done here. And like I said before, it can be done in code as well. Now let's grab a button. Put that up here. And let's grab a label and put the label in here. Let's resize it quick. Drag in the corners. And maybe we want that label to be centered. And maybe we'll give it some default text. All right, and so at this point, and we could have actually done it earlier, but we can run the app. The target here is selected as the iPhone simulator, so it's going to open up the simulator, which fits on the screen. Hooray! And we see nothing here right now. All right, there we go. The button does have a default behavior. Within the property inspector or within code, you can set properties for the button based on all of its different states. But by default, it does have a click behavior. The text box recognizes when you click into it. And in the simulator, you can either type with the keyboard or you can use the virtual keyboard here. Whoops. You can see that the button doesn't work because we haven't written any code, and the keyboard doesn't go away either. But it ran. All right, so now let's actually look at our view controller. So here in the header file, this is where the interface is defined, and then in the implementation file, we've got a couple of lifecycle methods, view did load and view did unload, which happen right after the view loaded and the view right after the view unloads. So what we need to do is let the view model know that, or let the interface builder know that there are properties in the view model that it needs to interact with. And so what we need to do is create an instance variable that is of type text field or of type button or of type label, and then create getters and setters for those in the view model. But there's a shortcut way to do that with a preprocessor directive called property. You can see the autocomplete. Whoops. This is a pointer. There we go. Hi. Writing live code. Okay. So what this is saying is that we want to generate a getter and setter methods, and they'll be the set quote. It'll be called set quote text field and quote text field, just like we showed before. But we don't actually have to type them ourselves. So that's what we'll do in the header, and in the implementation file, we're going to use the keyword synthesize, and that's going to create the instance variable for us as well as the implementation of those getters and setters. And then to be safe, I'm going to do a release here. I'm not really going to talk about reference stuff, but this just makes sure that there's no reference held to that particular object. So I'm kind of skimming by this, but I just want to make it clear that what we've done here is, in the end, create a getter and a setter for an instance variable called quote text field of type UITextField. The IB outlet specifies to the interface builder that this is something that it should be aware of and can interact with, but we didn't actually have to type any of that code ourselves. The last piece of this is to actually make the connection from the text field to to those properties, and I'm going to do this with the assistant editor here, and this is pretty slick. You just control drag from your object in the interface builder to the property in your header, and that little dot means the connection is made. There's a connection inspector that you can see there that quote text field is now associated. There's an even faster way to do this, and I'll do it for the rest of these things, and that is to control drag from the object into your header file and specify the name. We're going to call it say it button. And go to the header there so you can see that it created the property for it, it associated it, it created the synthesize, and it added the drop reference in the view did unload. Whoops, this one here. So even faster. We'll do that one last time for the label. And we'll call it word balloon label. Okay. Now there's one other thing that we want, one other way in which we want the view to interact with the view model, and that's to capture the event of the button click. So the keyword for that is IB action. It's IB outlet for the properties and IB action for the action itself. You can also control drag to create that. We're going to look at the properties of this button, of the possible events. And we want the touch up inside event for the button. I can just drag that right into the header as well. Let's call it, say it, button handler. And we'll go into the header and look. That's the wrong header. And you can see here we've got an IB action, say it button handler defined. The button sends itself as a sender, and in the implementation file, we've got a stub for that method right down here. So now it's just up to us to implement what we want to happen. And so let's say we're going to want what's in the text box to go into what's in the word balloon, right? So self.wordBalloonLabel.text equals self.quoteTextField.text. Pretty straightforward. All right, let's try it now. Okay, so it shows up in the word balloon. I can't believe that got applause. Oh, man. You guys just need to follow me home. This is fantastic. Okay. One thing that you'll notice here, though, is that the return button doesn't work. So the reason that is that there's an event there that isn't being handled properly. So we need to specify a delegate for the text field. And just for the ease of what we're doing here, we're going to make that our view controller. And I left my notes. Let's see if I can do this by memory. It's UITextFieldDelegate. Okay, so this is just saying that we're implementing the properties defined in, or UITextFieldDelegate is a protocol that we're going to adhere to. All of the methods in it are optional. One thing to note here, and I think you guys can see this. So when you click on a framework method or class or whatever, this little quick help over in the utility section pops up. It's super useful. So looking at UITextFieldDelegate, it tells us that all of the methods in this protocol are optional. Protocol is like an interface in Java or C. And by clicking the name here, this is actually going to pop open the organizer. The organizer is useful for a ton of things, but documentation is one of the biggest. And so clicking that popped open the organizer. It went to the UITextFieldDelegate protocol reference page in the documentation. And here we have a list of all of the properties and methods there. The one that we're interested in is this guy, text field should return, which asks the delegate if the text field should process the pressing of the return button. So there's the signature right there. Just grab that guy. And we're going to go into the implementation file. And I'm going to create a pragma mark. Put it down here. The pragma mark, it's almost like a bookmark. It's sort of a navigational helper. When you're looking at all of the properties and methods of a class, there's ways to browse them where you can see that pragma mark shows up right there just as a way to help organize things. So here's the implementation of that method. We want to return true, right? The Boolean value true in Objective-C is a capital yes, capital no is false. There's one other thing that we want to do here, and that is give up the first responder status. So if there's a response stack basically intercepting events, and at the time that the keyboard is open, the keyboard is first responder. It's intercepting all of the events that are coming in through the keyboard, and so we want to just say as as the keyboard dismisses itself, it should release that status. So the text field is the delegate that we're talking about here. The text field gets passed in as an object itself. We're going to say text field. It's not release, it's resign. Thank you. Resign first responder. I'm going to make a couple of other customizations here. I want this button to actually have some text in it. And for the keyboard, I'm going to look at the attributes inspector. I want the return key to say done. I can specify that here. Okay. Oh, I forgot to do one thing. Let's be a good example. Okay, we can say it. The done button still does not work. And that is because I did not actually specify to the text field that its delegate is the view model. We set up the view model to handle the text field delegate, but we need to actually specify that. So I'm going to, again, control drag here from the text field to the file owner and say that and the file owner in this case is the view model. I want to say that the view model is my delegate. Let's try it one more time. That works. And the keyboard disappears. All right. One last. Yeah. All right. One last thing here in our last couple of minutes. I'm sure you guys are eager to get to lunch. I'm going to add a font. And this is going to give us a reason to look at our P list. So the P list is a key value property list essentially that gets created, and you can put whatever you want in here, and then access it from your application. But there's a bunch of predefined properties, and the one I'm going to use is fonts provided by application. And I'm going to specify in here the one that I just added, which is. And then in the onload here of the view model, I'm going to set the font of the word balloon to that font. The at sign before the quotes tells the foundation classes that this is going to be an NS string. There is support for C strings in Objective-C, but NS string is a fully OO string, and it's what you'll normally use. And I think it's called this. And we're going to specify the size as maybe 16. Okay, let's see if that works on the first try. Yeah, all right. That's all right. That's okay. I'm more excited about it, I think. So there we've got, switching the font within the UI view so that it looks cartoony. Okay, that is all I wanted to cover. I know I went through it super fast, so if you guys have questions, or if you want to just run to lunch and then come up one by one and talk to me, that's cool too, whatever you feel comfortable doing. But that's all I wanted to talk about, so thank you very much.